next edition of Advisor Marketing Mindset with Tina Beck. We welcome today to the show a friend, a client, and a great leader in the financial services, John Piotrowski, the founder, the president, and the managing partner of Leeward Financial Group. John, welcome to the show today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
We are diving into a topic that I find exceptionally important for advisors today in terms of their marketing and branding, and that is vision versus execution. I have met throughout my career many advisors who have big goals and big ideas and big dreams for their practices and for their personal books of business. But where the rubber meets the road is taking action steps that take something out of the dream and the goal category and put them into play. And the reason why I invited John on the show today is, as a colleague who I've worked with for quite some time now, he is someone who exemplifies actually putting tactics into play that has elevated him both individually as an advisor and his practice as a leader. So John, to start off, so that the listeners can become familiar with you like I am, share with me and share with our listeners a little bit about your personal experience and a little bit about Leeward Financial Group.
Sure, thank you. So I've been in the business better part of 20 years. I spent most of my career at Ameriprise Financial, a wonderful firm. Spent a number of years in the leadership side of that. I've always had a practice, but and our goal at some point was to go to the independent advisory side, the independent affiliation side of the world. And we've recently done that. So after almost 20 years at Ameriprise, we recently moved to the independent channel of Raymond James. And probably 5 or 6 years ago, we went through our first kind of rebranding as a firm, as a group. And that was fun. It's challenging sometimes to figure out a name that resonates with you and that you think will resonate with your clients, and then to figure out how to wrap a branding campaign around that and how to make it meaningful, and how you do that and what types of things you have to do to create that between all of the public-facing technology that we have these days is not easy. And so that was a challenge. I would say one of the things we've enjoyed lately is really being able to expand on that, and working with your team has really helped. But Leeward Financial Group, which we rebranded to 5 or 6 years ago, is now an independent firm associated with Raymond James on their independent channel. We've got 4 advisors. We've got an accounting firm that's wrapped into ours. We've done a fairly good job building out practice associates and practice managers that have been a tremendous help. And we're in an exciting place where we're in high growth mode now. We've just opened an office in Tallahassee, Florida. We've got a headquarters here in, I would call it, northern Fort Lauderdale, and another office in Oakland Park. And we're looking at, we're exploring some opportunities in Palm Beach, in Naples, Gainesville. So got a lot of exciting things going on, which is bringing back to this conversation why branding and consistency and messaging is so important.
I want to dive into as we talk about that idea of the vision for our practice and then the actual tactics to put into place to bring it into reality. Something you and I have talked about offline, and that I think it'd be compelling for our listeners to hear your perspective on this, because it's a conversation I've gotten to enjoy on other occasions with you, is the idea of the me versus we in your marketing and branding, and the importance of, as a leader, seeing the collective, all the advisors, all of the team members within your organization as part of the brand and not just you. Can you share a little bit of your thoughts on that topic? I think they're really interesting.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there, and I hope we get to all of it. But I think it all starts in today's world of advisory practices. I think teaming has really become, kind of the norm, right? There's fewer individual practitioners and more team practices, ensembles, et cetera. And so when you're talking about marketing or branding or vision, and you're applying it to multiple people, it obviously makes it more difficult to get consistency across the board and to get buy-in across the board. And I think to your question, one of the most important pieces is, if you start from the beginning like I mentioned, rebranding, and you start with whatever your team name is, right? I think that team name needs to mean something to you, to the clients, to what you're trying to represent, and that everybody on your in your organization needs to understand, well, where that came from and why, and how that ties to your personal values and to the values of your practice. And if you don't start there, everything else that you try to do beyond that, I think just becomes a harder pull than it needs to be. So you've got to really start with people understanding, who are we? What are our core values as a practice, as an individuals? What do we want our clients to see and feel and think about us as we, you know, announce ourselves to them and we share us, with the public? What do we want them to know, and how do we tie all that back? And so if you start there, and then you make sure that everybody in your organization understands why we are the way we are, what we're trying to accomplish, what are our key focuses, what are our main values, and everybody buys into that at an early stage. I think that buy-in and that belief, that was a word I wrote down as I was listening through your question, is everybody's got to believe in what we're trying to do and what we're trying to accomplish. And I think that step gets missed a lot. We focus on, oh, we got the name, and oh, we're going to do this, and we're going to mail that, and we're going to do this video. But if we really didn't start with the why in the who we are and why we are this way, and what is our values and what is our mission statement and what are we trying to accomplish, and get everybody to buy into that vision, to use your word, I think that's the most important piece, Tina, and then you kind of build on from there.
Well, and I think that brings up a really interesting point in that there's some things that I think are kind of organic to a person's personality, because what you're talking about there's leadership, right? You're talking about somebody being able to not only think big thoughts, but put into the practices and actions and then inspire those around them, lead them into, I believe in, and I want to be part of this bigger picture, and I understand where I'm going, and I'm happy to come along on that journey. That is something I think that requires a deft touch. And in your experience, I mean, that's something you put into practice every day as both a leader, but as an advisor yourself. What are some of the skill sets that you employ to get that kind of inspiration and that buy-in among those that are part of Leeward Financial Group?
Yeah, Tina, it's such a good point. I mean, you said leadership, and really, that's what it is. I wrote down communication, but it really is. It really is both. It's leadership and communication. It is somebody in the organization needs to be the one that rallies the troops, that brings everybody together, that doesn't just talk at everybody, but asks, Tina, what do you think about this name, this brand, this mission, these values, what we want to accomplish? Do you feel like this is in alignment with who we are and what we want to accomplish, and get that feedback from you? I think so often we, as leaders of a team, will say, guys, this is what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to do it, and rah, rah, and we go out there, and it's just kind of a one-way communication, right? And so sometimes I think we have to kind of hit pause. And what I found to be helpful is get your whole team together, whether it's 2 people or 200, or the folks that are responsible for this piece of it, get together in a room and say, hey, guys, this is what we think our messaging needs to be. This is what we're about. This is what we want. This is what we want our clients to see in us. How do we feel about that? Is this who we are? Does this make sense? Is this going to resonate, right? And a lot of times you'll get different perspectives that you wouldn't expect to get, sometimes from your vice president or from your head of marketing or from your other advisor partners. They'll come out of the woodwork with stuff. They're like, well, I really hadn't thought about that, but that's a great idea, and we need to incorporate that. And sometimes when you do those things, that person now is much more connected to the vision, to the story, to the marketing, and to the branding, right? Because it wasn't just a directive, right? You got everybody's involvement, and you got a collective buy-in, and it all comes down to that core belief that, yeah, we know this is who we are, and we know this is what we're about and what we want to accomplish. And so sometimes even basic stuff like doing a values exercise, right? So can everybody in your organization list their top 3, 4, or 5 values personally? And does the business have a top 3 or 4 or 5 values? And is everything that you're doing around marketing, branding, vision, et cetera, in alignment with that? And I think that's probably missed a lot of the time, And so I went through that years and years and years ago, and some leadership training that I'm sure I attribute back to Ameriprise. But for me, it was helping others, and it was adventure, and it was family, and it was health, and it was wealth. Those are my five, and I've had them for 15 years. And so anytime we're doing something like this with an organization, I know what mine are. I help the organization come up with theirs, and then we make sure that we're starting from there and get everything in aligned with that. And I think when you approach it that way, the chances that you're going to get understanding and buy-in from others is much higher. And when it becomes meaningful and people believe it, you get a much better result.
Before I go to my next question, for those watching us on video, they're getting a behind the scenes look of what John and Tina's conversations look like on a daily basis, because you and I both started without pens in our hands, and we cannot help ourselves because we
I can't help it.
be conversation. And I, like, partway through, I picked it up and I started writing down things, and I saw you do the same thing, and I thought, we can't help ourselves. We learn from each other every time we talk. And I noticed taking notes and thinking of ideas even as we're on this call. So I just wanted to call that out because it's a good behind the scenes of what these meetings actually are like when John doesn't have them.
We do have a lot of fun.
We do have a lot of fun, and we learn a lot along the way, which is the important part. But I noticed you and I did it at the same time. I'm like, oh, there we go. We got our pens and our notepads going. I do want to spin off of what you just brought up, though, because we've talked a lot on the episodes far about leading within your organization. One of the trickier things, though, I think, is leading your client, and leading not only as the organizational head, but also training your advisors and team members to lead clients into understanding and presenting in a way that can be grasped and embraced the marketing message and vision and the practice, because that's really where you solidify that advisor-client relationship, and also how you acquire new clients. So can you speak to that a little bit about how you lead clients through your marketing efforts?
Yeah, I know, and I think it keeps coming back to communication, right? And I would two words: communication and consistency. So, if, for example, some of the values and branding and what we want to represent ourselves to clients, let's pick some things. We want to pick advice-based. Maybe we want to pick comprehensive. Maybe we want to pick personalized, right? So those things have to be everywhere, right? If you have a letterhead, is it down on the bottom? Whatever your team slogan is, right? Where we focus on a personalized, comprehensive advisory approach, whatever. Don't ask me to repeat that later, but whatever I said, if it's on the bottom, is it there? Is it on the website? Is it routinely used in your language, right? Are you saying the same things that you're telling the client, and are they seeing it on the website? Are they seeing it in all of your communications? Are they hearing it in what you're talking about? Are you bringing conversations back to that? Tina, I'm so glad we've done what we've done, because what it's allowed us to take a comprehensive look at your financial situation, and we've identified the things that are personal to you, and we figured out how to help you see a plan or see a track to accomplish that, right? I'm using the same words. I'm bringing everything back down. And so when you're talking about, well, how do you train your clients, or how do you get your clients to see, the vision or the marketing or the strategy or the direction that you're going, it's the communication and it's consistency. And everything needs to align with that. So when they see an email from you, they're seeing pieces of it somewhere. If it's in a message that you're writing or a newsletter, it's in there. If they're going on the website, if they're looking at their statements, and more importantly, in the meetings that you're having and in the conversations that you're having, are you drawing similarities between what you're talking about and some of these core values and core branding things that you're trying to identify? And so, and it works over time because they're constantly seeing the same themes, right? And then what ends up happening is they start to connect you with those themes and your business with those themes. And then maybe you'll do things like give a survey. We send a survey to clients before their meetings a couple of times a year. And we ask them things like, hey, we have fun with it. We're like, listen, we don't always remember to ask all the right stuff in a meeting. So what can we do better? What do you value most about what we do for you? Right. And they have all the time in the world to answer that and provide it to us before we have the meeting. And so many times when we look at that survey, you'll see a lot of the stuff that we're talking and communicating and showing them will be now reflected back to us. I really like how you're centered around family values. I really like how you take a comprehensive approach. I really like how you guys are constantly communicating with us, right? And you'll see it start to come back. And now then you really know that you've been effective in communicating, the message.
One of the things I think I highlight out of everything you've just described is just a high level of organization when it comes to your marketing and branding, because it's exemplative of everything you've said. You have it organized in your own space as the leader of the firm. You have it organized within what's communicated to your team members, and then you've taken it that step further and organized and disseminated it in a way that communicates with your clients. So all ships are rowing in the same direction. And something interesting, just trend-wise in the industry, when you see that level of organization, you see that kind of strong brand building, it attracts talent. It's something that I've seen personally over and over again in my time in this field. And I'd love to hear kind of your perspective, because I know you're actively recruiting right now and you're actively attracting talent to the Leeward. Where do you see the marketing and branding vision that you have being put to work through its execution to bring those type of talented advisors to your team?
I think that varies obviously based on the advisor, the team, and the approach. I wrote something down as you were talking. It reminded me of something that you and I did very early on. As one of the very first things that you wanted to do was to do an interview with me. And maybe I'm not using the right word, but you said, John, before we create a marketing campaign and we start working on this, I want to sit down and know more about you. I want to learn more about you and who you are and what makes you tick. And which I was like, oh, that's kind of refreshing. And it was more thorough than I expected. It was not 3 questions. It was more than that. And what was so cool is that you took a lot of stuff and you didn't talk to me a lot about it. It's not like you said, this is what I'm going to do. I don't even know what you're doing with it. But you took all that information, and then over the months, if you think about the context of what we're talking about, our branding, our communication, our posts, our website, our podcast, all the stuff, right? Answers that I gave you were woven into all this stuff. I'll look at a post that goes out on LinkedIn, and it was something I said to you 6 months ago in an interview about how I felt about something. And I'm like, wow, that's really cool, because it's not some generic thing that the firm said, hey, here's 20 things, pick one. That was a specific thing about me or how I felt or who I was that you took and put in a public facing piece. And I'm like, man, that's really cool. So I lost your question. You're gonna have to ask me again. But when you were talking, I wanted to make sure I pointed that out, because that's kind of the spirit of what we're talking about, right? And so you and I are doing something similar. You're doing that with me, and I do it with the team and with the clients. But ask me your last question again, because I got off on a sidetrack.
Yeah, sidetracks are a wonderful thing, and it actually still ties into the question. So, in terms of attracting talent, and big believer, and you know this, I always say, who you are is how you market. It's one of the lines that I use frequently, and why I always find to your point, why it's important to get to know the people that we're marketing is who they are is what attracts people to them. So, for firms looking to scale through growth, through recruiting in new advisors, acquiring any of those strategies and tactics, how does the discussion we're having today of putting into execution the big vision, how has that worked both for you and how you see it working in the industry in terms of attracting talent to an organization?
Yeah, that's great. And I think this will tie together well. So I started out by talking about knowing who you were, knowing what your values were personally and what your values are of an organization. And I shared mine. And one of mine was helping others. It's always been a driver for me. And, you talk about, well, how are you incorporating this and how are you using this with respect to attracting other advisors? And so, and I think you've probably heard me say this before, but for me, what I think I've learned over time from exhausting leadership trainings and just being a leader is that at the end of the day, what really motivates me is I think what I've learned is that I do better and am more successful when all of my focus and energy is to help the others in my organization be the most successful versions of themselves. And I think I spent a lot of years trying to figure out how to make me more successful. And I got frustrated because I didn't seem to ever get as successful or hit the goals or whatever I was trying to accomplish. And as I think I matured and learned over time and tried different things, I started focusing on the folks around me. And I started saying, well, you know what? Maybe I need to focus on what makes Tina tick. What can I do to help her? And so I kind of changed my outlook and approach over the years, and I spend a lot of my thought energy on how do I help Tina be the most successful version of herself? What can I do to help you? And it's in my messages, it's in my communication. I tell them openly in all the meetings, hey, I'm here to support you guys. I'm here to work for you. I'm here to figure out whatever I can do that's going to better help you be successful. And that's not for me to determine. I don't know what that answer is going to be. And so, in terms of attracting other people, I think that's maybe a rarity. I don't think there's that many people that approach it that way and look at it that way. I know I felt a lot of that same kind of feeling when I came to Raymond James, and it wasn't about us, or why. It was, well, John, what would help you be successful? I was like, well, no, nobody really asked me that before. And I said, well, I would like to do this, that, and the other. I said, well, let's work on how we provide those things to you, because that's important to me. And so I take that same approach that and that same kind of cultural feel to advisors that are thinking about joining our organization. As I think one of the most strongest value propositions we have is my attention and energy and all my collective experience is going to be focused on how I help you be the best version of you, whatever that is. And may not be a business thing. It might be a personal thing. It might be a leader thing. It might be it could be something totally disconnected from a results-driven business metric. But that might be the thing that helps you be more successful in all the other avenues of your life. So I think for me, tying all that kind of conversation together is taking one of my, probably most coveted values, which is helping other people, and figuring out how to lead that way and communicate that way, for me has been a game changer.
Interesting, because it is something I've seen in getting to know you, experienced in getting to know you. It's, first of all, the helping others is very genuine to you. It wasn't a core value that you just put on a piece of paper because you were doing the leadership exercise. You embraced the leadership exercise and put down something that's held for you for 15 years because it does mean something. But then also you've treated, in my experience, your values as skills to foster. So you're always actively exercising them, not just saying that you have them, but putting into practice, like you expressed in your meetings, and how you engage with potential new team members, how you engage with leadership at Raymond James. You put into practice, even I've experienced that, in ways to help other people. It's something that you use as almost an exercise, as a skill. Your value is a skill, and you work at it and keep it top of mind. So it's just, as someone who knows you, it's something I want to call out, because it is something I think makes your style of leadership unique. And I think it's something a lot of our listeners could learn from, because it's something they could work at too. I know it's something I've learned to work at through knowing you, is, okay, what are my values? How do I work at them every day and keep putting them into practice? So it's just, as you were talking, that was something I took a note on and wanted to call out, for the sake of our conversation.
Yeah, I want to try to maybe add a good takeaway tidbit that has probably been one of the most valuable things I've ever learned in the world of communicating and networking and marketing. Because I think for a lot of people, networking, marketing, public speaking, it's uncomfortable, and it's not something that we all run out there to do. And I know, for example, my wife, it's not her strong suit. She doesn't like going to networking events, and that she wasn't out there selling herself, right? It just wasn't one of her strong suits. And so I told her one time, and it might have been kind of whimsical at the time, but it's really turned out to be one of the most valuable things I think I could share, is we've all at some point had somebody talk to us about an elevator speech, or what is your 30-second commercial of you? If somebody says, John, what do you do? What do you tell them? And I guess it's important to have an answer. But quite honestly, the most important thing in the world that you can do is just be genuinely interested in the other person. And so what I would tell my wife is, I said, sweetheart, when you go to a marketing event and you're out here, you're doing this thing, don't worry about, dorked up about what you should say or how do you talk about you. Just ask questions. Tina, how are you? Tina, what do you do? Well, how does that work? Well, how did you get into that? And how, and if you're genuinely interested in the other person and you just ask questions, you will accomplish more from a marketing perspective or a learning perspective or a relationship building perspective than you will ever get from anything else. And that's, if there's one little nugget takeaway that people watching this can hopefully take, is that piece, is that I don't have to be perfect. I don't have to present perfect. I don't have to have the perfect elevator speech. I just genuinely have to care and be engaged in the conversations that I'm having and just ask questions. And if you do that, you'll be like, holy cow, that was the easiest conversation I ever had. I learned more about Tina in 5 minutes. And at the end of that, 9 times out of 10, you're going to turn around after spilling all of this and say, well, John, what do you do? Or how can I help you? And they're going to ask you, and you're not even going to have to tell it. And it just becomes a natural conversation. So that would be the one, tidbit takeaway I would, the themes all kind of tie together, right? It's be genuinely interested in whatever it is that you're working on, and the outcome's going to be that much better.
So I have one more question before we wrap up today, and it's one I kind of thought of as we're sitting here, because we've had a great discussion on kind of just setting the vision, implementing the vision for yourself, and then leading others, both clients and your team, leading prospective team members, and then the genuine nature that needs to be communicated in your marketing and just as a person within this industry to be truly successful. But that's all of the great sunshine rainbow side of it, right? And you mentioned, some people aren't natural public speakers. Some people aren't natural communicators. What tactics, I'm very curious, I don't know the answer to this question, and it popped up, so sorry I'm springing one on you, but what tactics have you used on those occasions when you get caught in a situation where things aren't going as planned? The vision and the execution are just off the rails. What has gotten you over some of those roadblocks? And can you share any of those stories with us?
Well, I'll see if a story comes to mind, but I think when we're talking about branding and we're talking about, if we're honest with ourselves, I guess I'm going to come back to that word. We're always, I think most people are trying to portray whatever you said, rainbows and sunshine, or that things are all great, or that, we are really wonderful, right? And sometimes just being humble and honest gets a better reaction than trying to overcome or trying to be too confident, or, because I think it comes across, kind of, disingenuous. So I think, to answer your question, what I go back to is really just a place of honesty. If I'm not having a good day, or I messed that up, or if I'm in a public speech and I totally botched something, I'll say, well, I totally botched that, or hey, I got off track, or and somebody said something to me when I was young. They said, your answer to everything is I'm fine, right? And if you think about that, it's a personal challenge I give myself. John, how are you? I'm fine. Oh, I'm great. Everything's wonderful. I challenge myself with it to try to answer that differently. John, how are you? I'm good. I had a lot going on with the kids, or gosh, I had a business challenge yesterday, or I'm doing great. We just got something done we've been trying to do for 20 years, right? I will try to answer differently and answer honestly. And I think to answer your question about, well, what do you do when it doesn't go right or it's going wrong, it isn't working? I just try to come back to an honesty, right, of some form or fashion, and because it's natural and it's true and it's factual, and you can never go wrong with being honest, right? And sometimes, which I'm not great at out of the box, is being humble or being open. That's something that you have to work on. But when things aren't going right, if I just go back and I'd say, you know what, this isn't going well. I'm not getting what I'm trying to get done. Here's what I'm struggling with. Maybe you can help me. And whatever the issue was, suddenly just gets better, right? Because I'm not trying to fluff it off. I'm not trying to dismiss it. I'm not trying to cover it up. I'm just saying, Tina, I'm screwing this up. This is what I'm trying to do. Maybe you can help me with it. And it all of a sudden just becomes better because I didn't make it harder for myself. So I don't know if that was just a total word salad answer or not, but hopefully there was something in there that you and your listeners can take away.
I wrote down, and my pen was handy, I wrote down honesty because I think, and that's kind of a common thread throughout this entire conversation, because really, I mean, at the base of it, it's marketing, branding, vision, and execution. And being honest about who you are, your goals, and your vision, that honesty allows you to communicate. That honesty allows you to put that best foot forward 99.9% of the time. And then when things don't go right, that same honesty, it allows you to collaborate with those you trust to fix a problem. So I think at the core, being authentic as an individual and with your brand is really, I mean, that's the takeaway I'm hearing from all the words we're saying in today's episode, and what I hope the listeners are hearing too. And hopefully you're getting a flavor of why I look forward every week to my strategy calls with John, because they kind of go like this, and he and I come up with those big ideas and big things that we go running with after the nature of the call. So I do thank you for being here today, and we will be sharing in our links how to get a hold of you on all of your social channels and your website. But I'd love them to hear it right from you. Somebody wanted to reach out to you directly. Do you have a preferred method of communication for a listener who just wants to learn more about you and the Leeward Financial Group?
Yeah, I'm easy. So I pay attention to the social media platforms. I pay attention to the email. So anything that's comfortable for anybody to reach out, I'm good with. And as you know, I don't keep office hours. So and I enjoy helping. So anything I can do to help anybody, if there's any piece of this that was valuable or anybody wants to kind of explore more of, I'm all for it.
Wonderful. Well, for all of our listeners, look in the caption below. You'll have links to all of John's social channels as well as the Leeward Financial Group. And John, thank you for joining us for Advisor Marketing Mindset with Tina Beck. Everyone, I am Tina Beck, and I will see you on the next episode. Bye-bye now.